The Topiary Cat, Chapter 6, The Mystery Deepens. Well, that's quite a tale, isn't it? And do you know, I believe you. I've been seeing strange things in the rose garden myself. There's something going on with the statues that has disturbed me as well. When I'm there in the early morning, or just before I go home in the evening, I often imagine I've seen movement out of the corner of my eye. But until you told me about Tolly just now, I had dismissed it. At the mention of his name, Tolly looked up from his chicken treat and mewed softly. Behind his green eyes, Grandpa swore he could see a glimpse of matters far beyond the knowledge of mere humans. He knew that cats had a sixth sense, and he imagined it being of great use, if only we could access it. "Let me show you something, Richard." Baba led Richard to the loft and dropped a ladder down. "Stay there, Tolly," the boy said, as the cat put a paw on the bottom rung. Grandpa flicked a light switch on and led the way. When they had clambered through the narrow hatch, Richard could see Baba's telescope pointing through a narrow window in the end wall. Grandpa went over to a desk nearby and pulled a newspaper out of a drawer. "I've been noticing odd star alignments recently, and so have other amateur astronomers. There's an article in the newspaper about it." Richard took the paper. The headline was, "A new constellation appears, puzzling astronomers." "What's a constellation, Baba?" "It's just a pattern of stars, Richard. See my star chart on the wall there? There's the Great Bear, Cassiopeia, Andromeda, and so on. Some of them look like animals, others are named after gods because of the shapes they suggest. Remember when you came up one night and we looked at the moon and Saturn's rings? I also explained how two galaxies could collide without one star hitting another, and you found that hard to understand. I also pointed out Orion, a hunter in Greek myth. Now that's a constellation." "I thought those had been there forever, and you couldn't get new ones." "Well, that's what everyone believed, until now. It is very, very odd indeed. The newspapers mark the locations of the new stars in the sky, but nobody has come up with any theories yet as to what they might signify. I had done a sketch of my own before I saw theirs, so you can have that if you like. Now we'd better go down. Your mummy will be worried if you're away too long." She won't," Richard thought to himself. His mother was probably too engrossed in her art to be aware he was out. He preferred it that way. He wouldn't have wanted her to be worried, and, being a sensible lad, he was very careful. He wouldn't talk to strangers. He was too inhibited anyway, and he knew how to cross a road safely. On the way home, Tolly by his side, he mulled over this conversation with Baba. It was all very confusing. These events, the statues, Tolly's reaction, and the mysterious stars appearing all seemed to be linked. But how? He clutched Baba's star sketch tightly, resolving to study it that evening in his room. Passing through the front gate, he looked up at the Topiary Cat, serene in the evening sunlight. "The Topiary Cat looks so wise, I can almost see him thinking," he thought to himself. Really, Richard wished the bush could talk, but he didn't tell this to anyone. They thought him odd enough already. Spending hours with Tolly, making up stories, gazing into a pond, or just looking up at the clouds and seeing faces and animals in the shapes was considered strange behaviour by less imaginative souls. After dinner, he rushed up to his room and laid the star map out on his desk. Tolly sat right next to it, and, unusually for a cat, didn't sit on top of the drawing, but gazed at it fixedly, just as Richard was doing. The dots Baba had marked on the sheet were clear enough. He had drawn them quite large in black, with the other stars smaller in blue ink. After staring at the dots for a very long time, the boy yawned loudly, stretched, and shuffled across the creaky floorboards to bed. Tolly lay on top of the covers in a tight ball and went straight to sleep. He seemed reluctant to go outside hunting at night again. Richard switched off the light and was astonished to see an unusually bright after-image of the star chart imprinted onto his retina. Laying in bed looking up, it seemed as if the stars were actually there in the sky above him, and the ceiling had flown away. It was indeed a jaw-dropping sight, but soon Richard's eyelids began to droop, and he nodded off into a deep sleep. Don't miss the next chapter of The Topiary Cat, read by Richard Saunders.